All right. Well, I do have 30 past the hour. So our next talk this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you're joining us today, comes from Tacoa Roberts from The Ohio State University. I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Caleb. Hi, my name is Tacoa Roberts, and happy Halloween, everyone. Um, I am the TPD coordinator at the CLSC at Ohio State University. I also have Dr. Amy Kulesza, who is going to be in the chat. So if you guys have any questions as I'm going through my presentation, feel free to drop those in the chat, and she should be able to answer any of those questions, and any lingering questions I'll answer at the end. I am presenting on our work on the development of a code book for analyzing our interview data on TPD impact. So this is just an outline of my talk today, but for the sake of time, I am going to go ahead and jump right into the background for our project. This study was conducted to help us better understand the changes in TAs regarding the quality of their teaching and their professional identities as they gain iterative exposures to our teaching professional development course, Biology 5001. For context, Biology 5001 course is a requirement for all of our TAs teaching in our department each semester. In this course, TAs amass points by participating in a suite of activities such as attending workshops or joining a journal group, and in order to meet their personal PD goals for a given semester. Our study was designed to capture a set of longitudinal case studies of TAs over the course of 4 years and provide a snapshot of each term. This approach ideally will let us know short-term and long-term changes in TAs as they're experiencing our Biology 5001 course. The prime objective was to improve the course and gain an understanding of how best to prepare TAs for sustainable teaching of undergraduate biology. There were various tools that we used to assess growth and impact over the 4-year span, which included surveys, classroom observations, grades, student evaluations, and student assessments of their learning gains, as well as interviews. Interviews were used to capture participating instructors' own voices to identify and illustrate these themes related to their changes in professional identity and how that impacted the student learning experience. There were a total of 29 instructors, which were composed of GTAs, UTAs, and contractors, for a total of 52 interviews conducted over the 4-year span of the study. So we adapted our methods from DeCrew and Gumby 2011 with a focus on the use of data-driven codes. Me and my colleagues, we reduced the raw information into keywords and phrases, and then identified themes among those phrases. We used the emergent themes in order to identify codes and create concise and comprehensive definitions with examples. And this approach, even though it's iterative, it allowed us to choose the best codes to fit the themes represented in the data. There were 3 main questions from the interviews we focused on for identifying themes. They were, how have you changed in terms as an educator this term? How much has Biology 5001 contributed to these changes? How do those changes relate to improvements in student learning? And how do you know? We felt these questions would help capture the answer to our overall focus of understanding the changes of the professional identities of our TAs, as well as the TA's impact on student learning improvements. For our first question, we were able to identify 6 codes. They were the teaching esteem referencing, improved communication referencing, productivity referencing, confidence referencing, improved metacognition skills, and recognition of professional growth. Listed in each box, you will see the themes listed below the codes, which led us to determining the codes as well as constructing the definitions for each code. But for the sake of time, I will only show a couple of examples of the codes we found commonly throughout throughout the interview process, as well as those that we found surprising. So the first two codes we'll look at from question 1 is the code of improved communication referencing, and this was referring to descriptions by RTAs of increased effectiveness and incorporation of student-centered learning methods in their classrooms. As we can see in these examples, the TAs mention new ways of presenting information and engaging with students and student learning approaches. For instance, in one interview, the interviewee stated that they were able to figure out new ways on how to present information in several different ways. In another interview, an interviewee stated, I like being engaged more in the students. They would learn more that way. It's very student-centered, and I feel like it has been very helpful. The second code to note was the confidence referencing. So referencing their growth in the area of confidence in their TA roles. And we were able to see in these examples that some TAs directly stated gaining more confidence in their teaching roles, even without prior experience. In this example, we can see, well, I had absolutely no background experience in education, so I feel that I've become much more assured in my role as an educator and more confident in my abilities throughout the semester. In another interview, the interview stated, I think I've gained more confidence in my ability to teach because I have actually gone up and had to do it. In our second research question on how Biology 5001 contributed to those changes, we were able to identify 4 codes: the instructive resource, preparative resource, community involvement referencing, and lack of alignment. And it was interesting to note the last one, the lack of alignment, which I will explain shortly. So first, I want to point out a code that was reoccurring amongst RTAs, which was the theme of preparative resource, so them being better prepared or being mentored. And we define this as 5001 help to better prepare them for their lessons, as well as enhance their relevant skills in preparation. And for example, we can see in this interview, the interviewee stated, I feel like I always had a resource or a crutch, which was great. Getting feedback from the instructor that was a page long was incredible because you get it back and you feel gratified. One code that we found surprising was the lack of alignment code, which we defined as them defining 5001 as having no impact or being a missed opportunity for them due to the course not aligning with their values or their goals for the semester. And in this example, we can see the interviewee stated that Biology 5001 in and of itself has been less influential than, say, my experiences and interactions regarding the role of the university. And another interviewee stated that they felt like some of them, I feel like some of them I did skirt through, meaning activities. I feel like that's maybe not as effective because I know that I just have to do something in order to get my points. Some of the meetings that I went to were pretty good, and some of the hands-on activities I went to felt like they were very abstract and people didn't take them seriously. For the first part of question number 3, whether or not they were able, how those changes related to improvements in student learning, we were able to identify 3 codes: student focus code, relationship building referencing, and clarification referencing. And I wanted to point out and highlight the student focused code. This theme was echoed throughout the interviews and was used about their use of the student learning practices, which we define as providing tailored support and guidance to each student's learning style and pace in the student focus code. We have two examples of that. This first one being, but yeah, I guess it's just their willingness to engage themselves, I think, and that's stemming from me sort of learning that's how people interact with their teachers. And the second example was that with the training modules, I guess with the veterans of student learning, once I find out more about how the students were, I went back and was able to use the 5001 knowledge to better tailor to the students. And the second part of question 3, so how do they know? We were essentially trying to identify ways that they would measure student learning improvements based on their changes. And we were able to identify 3 codes, the feedback as a metric, participation referencing, and uncertainty referencing, which I'll be speaking on the feedback and the uncertainty referencing. For feedback as a metric, and discussions about knowing student improvement occurred by changes in their TA professional development over the semester, feedback was often highlighted. And so we define this as assessing students' feedback to guide understanding of TPD impact on student learning improvements. And one example of that was a lot of them express how they become more interested in learning. It's just from the way that I was teaching biology. An example of this, whether they would tell me verbally or even sometimes throughout the semester, I've realized that when they would hand in assignments, that they would have fun facts or additional things on them. One that we found a little concerning but interesting through the interviews was this uncertainty referencing. So our TAs expressed a difficulty or inability to articulate what a way to measure student learning improvements. And one example of that was an interviewee stated, well, I guess their thanks is very subjective way. It's a very subjective way to measure, like, oh yeah, thanks for all the help. I haven't looked at my SEIs or the final grades to see if they've improved, referring to their students. And then another interviewee stated, I guess I don't know that I've necessarily looked at specific students to see if they're improving or not for this semester. So based on those questions and those identified codes, so far our initial conclusions are that TAs often express increased levels of confidence through participation in professional development courses. The TAs articulated increased use of student-centered learning approaches and evidence-based practices in teaching after exposure to the professional development course. 2 areas that were surprising were that TA suggests not putting enough effort or worth into their professional development process, with an increased desire to participate more possibly in future occurrences, and also that TAs tend to struggle to articulate or understanding how to evaluate students for their learning improvements. So our next steps in this pilot is to first compare these themes across the remaining interview transcripts, all the way into the spring 2019 semester, and then also to determine the reliability of those codes by allowing another colleague in order to apply those codes to the interview data that is remaining. And I'd like to end my talk by saying thank you to our predecessors on this project, Dr. Judy Ridgway and Erica Seltzer, who created the framework and collected the data for this project. I also like to thank Dr. Amy Kulesza, the PI of the study, and Dr. Luba Cubonova for their contributions to this study and guidance so far. So thank you.
Thank you. Great talk. Excuse me. We do have time for some questions. So feel free to put those in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask, that will work too.
I'm going to show myself today. Very scary. Thank you so much. This is really the depth of this is pretty incredible. And I'm really wondering if you all were going to take the opportunity that I see in this is to create maybe use all of these themes that you've identified to create some sort of a survey that all of the rest of us could use to document outcomes of TPD programs. Like it just seems like this is a great moment in time to be able to say, ooh, all of these things might be possible. And then we could all use one survey to rule them all to look at outcomes.
Oh, I think that's a great ideal. We have not actually thought about that aspect of it yet. We were thinking more so as using it as a comparative tool to more of the um, statistical surveys that they also completed to make measures from that. But that is something that we can definitely add to our to-do list, if you guys find that as a valuable resource.
You're getting some yes and please comments in the chat. Any other questions for Takoa?